If you were an artist, you probably have went to YouTube to look, how do I get better at drawing? YouTube would probably give you results like, do this practice 10 times a day, draw 100 drawings in one day to get better, blah 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 blah. Kidding aside though, I think it's very conventional for artists to study art in a very disciplined manner, where they would do study drawings or plates or gesture drawings and anatomy studies, all that fancy stuff. Me personally, I kinda didn't study that much. I talk about fundamentals quite a lot in my other videos and also on stream because I simply agree that fundamentals is very important when it comes to being better drawing. However, I never really found conventional way of practicing them that appealing to myself. It's probably a me problem, don't get me wrong. I'm not very disciplined as an individual. I've always been not so disciplined. I'm very bad when it comes to very disciplined studies and very repetitive tasks and all that stuff. I'm very fun driven. If something isn't fun, I wouldn't be able to do it. Knowing myself, which I think is very important, I was able to play around that weakness of mine. And so, I guess I'll talk about this unconventional way of studying art. I guess maybe you guys could get some insight from it. Maybe apply it for yourself if you're the same as me. So basically, what I did was, instead of working on countless plates repetitively to learn like a specific skill, like say for example you want to learn anatomy, composition, or poses, perspective, all those stuff, you're most likely gonna be recommended to draw specific plates that would correspond to those fundamentals. I feel like the good thing about doing those is that they're very specific and they wouldn't take as much time as just simply drawing a full-on piece. However, I feel like what the conventional method is missing is that they tend to be boring, or at least for me, it was boring. I know some people would say that simply learning or the act of learning is interesting in itself. Well, maybe for them. For me, it's rather boring. What I did was I first wait for that feeling of wanting to draw something. Like for example, I want to draw an anime character, or I want to draw like a specific scenery or a picture or a character that I love. Maybe my Oshi, maybe a certain VTuber, maybe someone has a birthday or the character has a special something during this date or whatnot. I first look for someone that I want to draw before I look for something that I want to learn. So the learning comes in secondary from actually drawing what I like. Basically, I know my priorities. I'm kidding. So yeah, I draw mostly a full piece. Sometimes not a full piece, like a full effort piece. Sometimes I just speedrun the thing. Sometimes I spend like an hour or two to finish the piece for example, if I want to practice to draw faster, or there's just this specific composition that I want to try out, or specific color palettes, or whatever experiment I want to do. Sometimes I just do a quick drawing of it, but sometimes I do a full-on illustration that takes me more than just 2 hours, sometimes even 7 or more. I guess that's the downside of it, that it takes more time, it takes more effort and commitment to learning ratio. Because I also tried plates before, and for example, gesture drawings takes you like what, half an hour to do a couple gesture drawings, and I must admit they in fact were helpful. But you know, at the end of that, you're gonna look at it and you're gonna be like, yeah, I learned from this, but there's no like result that I'm really proud of. I guess I'm proud of learning, but the piece that I produce is more of like just a practice. So that's the biggest trade-off. Despite that, I would say I still was able to learn efficiently. Or maybe efficiently is not the term. I guess just learning. I was able to learn art properly. I was able to study most of the fundamentals that I need to learn. I'd say I have a pretty good understanding of some very basic fundamentals. I wouldn't say I've mastered everything yet. I'm still learning. At this point, I'm still studying. The biggest advantage that I had is that I enjoyed all of the time I was drawing. Whenever I do drawings, I just enjoy the hell out of it. I enjoy the experimental part. It really makes me excited to experiment on drawings and see like an actual final result I just can't get enough of it, and I've been doing it for like a decade, more than a decade actually, if I'm not mistaken. Being able to do it for longer was my edge. I guess slow and steady wins the race. However, I would say if you are at a certain age, this wouldn't really appeal to you as much. So I started early, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it worked for me that well. Because, you know, I wasn't really chasing after time. Who knows, maybe I would have been a better artist if I actually properly studied. There's also the factor of me not having a mentor. I did wish to have a mentor or actually formally study art, but I wasn't that privileged. My parents were rather practical when it comes to studies. So if I'm not really studying that much, how am I studying, right? What I normally do is that, for example, I'm making a fan art, like later part in my learning career as an artist. Even in commissions, I'm trying to learn and experiment. So whenever I'm working on a commission or working on a fan art, I try to look for a fundamental that I want to learn or relearn or maybe re-practice. Because at this point, I think I've tackled most, if not all, the fundamentals that I needed to learn. But you know, learning and mastering is completely different. Fundamentals are easy to read on and learn, but applying them and being able to master them, that you don't really have to think that much at that point. Mastering it is a very, very different story, and you have to constantly refresh and restudy, revisit all those stuff in order to actually master it. And I feel like, honestly, even if you feel that you've mastered something, the learning process doesn't really end. I feel like our lifespans are too short to actually say that, yeah, I have learned it all. I don't think so, man. So yeah, what I do is that whenever I'm working on a piece, I look for a fundamental that I want to study or want to experiment on, and I apply it. That application of the fundamental kind of works as a practical application of it. It helps you look and learn how it affects your drawing, and you're gonna see it in the final piece if you're able to apply it properly. And while working on it, you're gonna be able to tell that, yeah, I'm struggling a little bit, therefore I haven't mastered this thing yet. That's kind of how I probe myself and learn. And whenever I spot that I'm struggling on something, that's when I know that I really need to work more on that fundamental. I think it often results in pieces that are rather unique to each other, because I'm trying to like focus on something and it affects the final output of my drawing. But being able to output something that is actually like final and well polished, I feel like it's a really nice thing to be able to do. It's one of my biggest frustrations when it comes to conventional studies, is that you're gonna end up with a sketch or something that only focuses on what you're trying to practice, and it's almost always never a full piece, or it's rarely something that you want to draw, at least for me. Like dude, I don't really want to draw vases or flowers or food or random 3D shapes. I did find like drawing Greek statues interesting though. That was the only practice that I actually enjoyed doing. Fan arts, I did them a lot, especially earlier in my commission career. Like back when I wasn't too busy working on commissions, I did a lot of fan arts, and I often always apply something that I want to try to learn. Which is why I would recommend this actually to a lot of artists that would want to try out learning art. Let's admit, we like making fan arts. We love making fan arts for our oshis and whatever character we want to draw, or maybe your own OC, right? This gives you time to do both. This gives you time to do fan arts while studying. It's like hitting two birds with one stone. But yeah, at the end of the day, we learn differently. Art is a very, very broad pursuit that all of us will have very different preferences and experiences. And I am just here to share what worked for me and how it resulted. The result is that I was able to learn eventually. Because I would say it's pretty slow. It's not the fastest method out there, but for me, fun is always the priority over just learning. For me, it doesn't matter how fast you learn or how good of an artist you are if you're not happy along the way. Art shouldn't be hard, shouldn't be frustrating. I guess it could be frustrating sometimes, but let's try our best not to make it as frustrating as it should. And yeah, find out what works for you, and if you were able to get some insight out of my experience, then it would be great. If you're gonna follow it, then great. If not, then also okay. If you prefer studying with discipline and formally studying art, then good for you. If that works for you and you don't find it very tiring or frustrating, then honestly, that's a talent. That's a talent to be able to study, man. But yeah, not for me. Not for me.